Hello guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Freddy, and today we are analyzing the quadratic equation. Okay, and this is actually chapter 1 in your grade 12 mathematics. Without further waste of time, let's get to it. So you would see that the first thing, they indicate to you that the root of ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. The root of this equation is the x values. So whenever you come across the word the root of the equation, you should know that they are actually referring to the x values. If they ask you to find the roots of the quadratic equation, they are simply asking you to look for the x values. Now, this equation is what we call the quadratic equation, right? It's the equation of the second degree. The equation of the second degree, meaning the highest exponent is 2, right? So that is what we call the quadratic equation. And another thing is, you must know is that if the equation is in this format where it is equal to 0, you should know that this, we say that the equation is in standard form. If it is equal to 0, all right? We'll get into more details as time goes on. So this is quadratic equation, and the quadratic equation is the equation ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. Now, when they ask you for the roots of that equation, they're simply asking you for the x values. Okay? They're asking you for the x values. Okay? Remember that. Now, the root of ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0 are the values of x. You see? They emphasize it there again. The roots of the quadratic equation are the x values. Alright? Are the x values which satisfies the equation. So now, not any x value, but the x value that satisfies the equation. What do we mean by that? We mean that the x values which, when we substitute or we put in place of x, when we substitute into this equation or we put them in place of x, the left side and the right side are in balance. That is, if the right side is equals to 0, then the left side is also equals to 0. Okay. So this sentence here is very important. It's very important, right? So this is what you need to scrutinize, analyze, understand before you even dive into the chapter. Because everything that you're going to find in the chapter is going to depend on this sentence right here. That is one of the great things about maths, because in the beginning of the chapter, they set the ground rules. They give you the tricks. They give you the gist of the chapter. They give you the formulas. They give you the weapons that you need to use to tackle each and any problem that you might encounter within the chapter. So this is it right here. This is the important part of it. So Do not rush yourself on the introduction of the chapter. The basics are the ones that are very important. Do not rush yourself, and make sure that you analyze and understand the basics, and feel free to spend as much time as you need on this introduction. So we're going to go over it one more time. So in the beginning, I mentioned that this is quadratic equation. And what is quadratic equation? It's the equation of the second degree in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. This equation that you see here is what we call the quadratic equation. And if the equation is equal to 0 like this, we say it is in standard form. And when they refer to the roots of that equation, that's simply implying that they're looking for the x values. All right, remember that. And which x values? The x values that satisfies the equation, not just any x value. And then what do we mean by that? We mean that the x values which will make the equation to be true. Will make the equation to be true. Just a quick example. If I say to you 2 is equals to 3, that is not true. Not true, because 2 is not equals to 3. If I say 4 is equals to 4, this is true. All right. So similarly, we mean that the values, the x values that makes the left and the right side of the equal sign to be the same and true. All right. I'm just gonna go ahead and remove that so that we don't get confused as we go along. So the equation, the x values that make the equation to be true. Now they went ahead and gave us the example, and in this type of example, they say to you one of the roots of the equation x squared plus x minus 6 is equals to 0 is 2. All right, one of the roots, meaning 2 will be the x value. Great. So remember that when you see the roots is actually the x value, right? And just because they didn't put a value before x squared, you know that there is a 1, and you know that there's also a 1 here as well. If I would divert a little bit, what I mean by that, what I mean is if the value of a is 1, then you're gonna have x squared. Sometimes they don't put it. Okay, so the fact that they didn't put it doesn't mean it's not there. All right, similarly to b, the value of b will be 1 there. Remember that if you have 2 is to the power 1, it is also over 1, it is also times 1. Okay, because 2 to the exponent 1 gives you 2. 2 divided by 1 give you 2. 1 times 2 give you 2, or 2 times 1 gives you 2. So remember this, that x squared plus x minus 6 is equal to 0. It is still a quadratic equation because it is in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c is equal to 0. Okay. All right. Okay. So now, moving forward, they say to you that one of the roots of the equation x squared plus x minus 6 equals to 0 is 2, because 2 squared plus 2 minus 6 equals 0. And this is actually true. So in place of x, in this equation right here, in place of x, we put 2 because they told us that 2 is the root. So let's prove that it is actually the case. So if you go along with it, you will actually realize that 2 squared will give you 4 plus this 2 over here minus 6 equals 0. Okay, and then 4 plus 2 will give you 6 minus 6 over here is equals to 0. So 6 minus 6 is 0 is equals to 0. So the left side and the right side of the equation is the same. So the equal sign is satisfied. The equilibrium exists. So it is actually true. Now, one might have a question to say, how did you find out that 2 is actually the root of the equation? And that is where factorization comes into play. And there is 2 ways of factorizing or finding the roots. For quadratic equation, you can simply factorize. And the second method is using the quadratic formula. If you don't want to crack your head and you just want to get to the chase. For example, let's look at the first one, which is factorization. So the first one, which is factorization. So we're going to factorize x squared plus x minus 6 equals to 0. So x squared plus x minus 6 is equals to 0. Okay. Now, the first thing that you need to make sure is that your equation is in standard form. They can sometimes give you the equation not in standard form. For example, with this equation, they can give you it in this manner. They can say x squared plus x is equals to 6. This is still a quadratic equation, but it's not in standard form. So for you to put it in standard form, you simply just take this 6 back to this side, okay? Back to this side. And then what do you know? The sign will change from positive to negative, and then it will be like this. And then now we say this is in standard form. That's the first thing. Because it's an equation of the second degree, then you're going to make 2 brackets for equation of the second degree. You're going to make 2 brackets, and then you're going to factorize. Look for the factors of the first item, first term, and look for the factors of the last term. And then now, the factors of the first term, you have x squared times 1, or you have x times x. Okay. And then the factors of the last term, you have 1 times 6, and you have 2 times 3. Okay. You have 2 times 3. So you are going to look for the factors. So in this case, you're going to take the factors that can give you the middle term. You'll see what I mean by that. For the first one, you will take this one, which is x this side, x that side. Okay. Now, the value of b here is 1. The value of b in this equation is 1. The value of b in this quadratic equation is 1. So you're going to look for the factors of 6 that can give you 1. 1 plus 6 will give you 7, or 1 minus 6 will give you 5. So this one doesn't give you, it doesn't give you 1. So 2 plus 3 will give you 5, or 2 minus 3 will give you 1. So these are the factors that we're gonna go with. So we're gonna put 3 and 2 because they give you 1. Because we have a 1 here, the value of b is 1. Now, do we have a positive b or a negative b? Do we have a positive 1 or a negative 1? That's the next question you're gonna ask yourself. And then the answer is we have a positive 1. So then it means you must have a 3 that is positive and a 2 that is negative. Okay. Now, then it means that you have now factorized this equation, and then when you're going to look for the value of x, you will say x minus 2 is equals to 0, or x plus 3 is equals to 0, in which case x will be equals to positive 2. In this case, x will be equals to negative 3. So if you remember carefully, they mentioned that positive 2 is one of the roots, okay, and negative 3 is the root that they didn't tell us about. So if we plug negative 3, we should be able to satisfy this equation, and let's do that and see. So if we do that, we're gonna be having minus 3 squared plus minus 3 minus 6 is equal to 0. So minus 3 squared, you'll be having a positive 9, minus 3 minus 6, which should be 0. So 9 minus 3, you'll have 6 minus 6. Okay, 9 minus 3, you'll have the 6. 6 minus 6 will be 0. So you have 0 is equals to 0. So it is satisfied. Okay, so that is what we need. Now, you are not actually done after factorizing. There is a further step that you do on your screen just to verify if the factors are correct. So how are you going to do that? Just come over the side, the space. So you're going to say, okay, fine, I factorize that. The factors for the quadratic equation is x minus 2 into x plus 3 is equals to 0. Now, you need, when you multiply this, it must take you back to the original equation for you to be able to say that the factors are correct to satisfy yourself. So how do you do that? You are going to say x times x, that will give you x squared. And then you're going to say x times 3, that will give you positive 3x. And then you're going to say 2 times x, that will give you negative 2x. And then lastly, we're going to say 2 times 3, negative 2 times positive 3, that will give you negative 6, and then that is equal to 0. So at this stage, you are going to add your like terms. You're going to add your like terms. So you have only one x squared, but you have you have 2 x terms. So this term looks like itself and it doesn't have a friend. This one doesn't have a friend, but this one has a friend. So you positive 3 minus 2, that will give you 1x. So you have x squared plus 1x minus 6, which is equal to 0. So at this stage, this equation is the same as that one. So you have satisfied yourself that you have factorized and then you found the roots of the equation. Now, this is one way of doing it. So let's go to the other way of doing it. Okay. So the other way of doing it is using the quadratic equation. The quadratic equation. The quadratic equation is there to help you with the the quadratic formula is there to help you with the quadratic equation. For you to use the quadratic equation, which is x is equals to minus b plus minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. For you to be able to use this, you need to first have your equation in standard form, which is now x squared plus x minus 6 is equals to 0. So when you have your equation in standard form, your quadratic equation in standard form, let me just write here ax squared plus bx plus c is equals to 0. So this is your quadratic equation. Now this is the other quadratic equation that we are working with at the moment. So now you are going to identify the value of, in this equation, you're going to identify the value of a, which is equals to 1 in this case. Remember I said even if they didn't write it, it's there. So which is 1. The value of b, which is also 1 in this case. Because in place of b, there is a 1. In place of a, there is a 1. Now, lastly, the value of c. The value of c is minus 6. Okay. So now, you take this, you plug it in your quadratic formula. Alright, so you'll have x is equals to minus, your b is 1, plus minus the square root of, let me do this so that we can have a clear distinction. Your value of b is 1 minus 4 into a, which is 1, c, which is minus 6. Okay, all over 2 into a, which is 1. So here you're gonna have x is equals to minus 1 plus minus the square root of 1 minus 4 times 1 is 4, right? 4 times 6 is 12 times 2, which is 24. And then because you have a negative here and you have a negative there, so negative times negative will be positive. 4 times 6 will be 24. Okay, all over 2 times 1, 2. Okay, so then the next step will be x is equals to minus 1 plus or minus the square root of 1 plus 24 is 25 all over 2. Okay, and then you will then have 2 of this equation. All right, you have x minus 1. X is equals to minus 1 plus the square root of 25 is 5. So you'll have minus 1 plus 5 over 2, or minus 1 minus 5 over 2. In this case, you're going to have positive 4 over 2. In this case, you're going to have negative 6 over 2. In this case, you're going to have a positive 2. In this case, you're going to have a negative 3. So these are the roots that we found with the other method of factorizing. Okay, so there you have it. So now this all was just to analyze the quadratic equation. The quadratic equation, we are still in the first introduction of the chapter that you need to take serious. This is the part that you need to take serious. Okay. This is the part that you need to take serious. Okay. So now we are going to now take one example. Okay. So make sure you get this, let it sink in, and go through it carefully. It is just a few sentences. It's just 3 sentences, but it carries the weight of the chapter. It carries everything. If you understand this paragraph, then you're gonna be able to understand everything inside. So basically with mathematics, guys, what happens is we give you the tools, and then from there we trick you. You see how good you remember your basics. It's just a game. I'm sorry to say it, but it's just a game. I don't know what they call this game, but when I want you to think of mathematics like this. You see that game where you have 3 cups, like that, 3 cups, and then they take a coin and they put it in 1 cup. Okay, so they show you the 3 cups, they open them to you, and you see that the cups are empty. They show you the coin, they put it down, and they cover it with 1 cup. And then you look from that point on. So that is the basics. That is the basics in mathematics. They show you everything, they put the coin there, they cover it, and you know it is in cup A. Those is the same as this. Now, then what they're going to do is they're going to move the cups around. That is the process of tricking you. And then they ask you in which cup is the coin. So it's basically just like that. It's not complicated. It's basically just like that. You focus, you spend time on your mathematics, you're gonna get it right. It's a very fun subject. And it's just a game. If you think of it as just a game, you're gonna get it right, and you're gonna love it, and you're gonna enjoy it. And then at the end of the day, you're gonna master it. Right. And it will actually be, it's actually one of those subjects that they don't really take too much for you to understand. If you can just, in each and every chapter, when you get to it, make sure that you grasp the basics, you dwell on the basics. Then no matter how complicated an equation will be, you will be able to eventually get it, because it's basically we give you the tools, we give you the inside story, and then after we trick you to see how good you are, how good do you remember your basics. So now in this example, it's the same thing. They say to you, if minus 3 is one of the roots. Now they can say to you that if minus 3 is one of the values that satisfies the equation, one of the x values that satisfies the equation. But then we know we don't want to say that. We're trying to trick you, remember? We're trying to trick you. So we're gonna use the word roots. It is up to you to remember that whenever we talk about the roots, we basically referring to the x values of the equation which satisfies the quadratic equation in the context of quadratic equation. So if minus 3 is one of the roots of 2x plus 3x plus k is equals to 0, find the value of k. K is placeholding for c. Is placeholding for c. And they're basically saying to you that the value of x is minus 3. That's what they're basically saying. but they're not saying it straight, because remember again, we're trying to trick you. So if you grasp the introduction and you understand the introduction, you will be able to understand that no, here when they talk about the roots, they're actually implying that this minus 3 is the value of x. So now you're gonna take your equation, which is your quadratic equation, which is x squared plus 3x plus k is equals to 0, and you're gonna substitute your value of k of x. In place holding for x, you're gonna put minus 3. So 2 into minus 3 squared plus 3 into minus 3. Everywhere you see x, you put minus 3 plus k is 0. Then here you have your 2 there, and then minus 3 squared minus 3 times minus 3 is positive 9. So you have your positive 9 plus 3 times minus 3 will give you a negative 9. Negative 9. Positive times negative is negative. 3 times 3 is 9. And plus your k, which is 0. Here 2 times 9, this will give you 18. 18 minus 9 plus k, like that. So 18 minus 9, you remain with your 9. Okay, so you have your 9 plus k is 0. At this stage, you just simply move your 9 to the other side of the equal sign, and you know the drill, it changes the sign. So you'll have k is equals to negative 9. So the value of k is negative 9. We will leave it here, but this is another way we can trick you and check if you have grasped your basics. Do you understand the chapter? Now in this case, they've given you the value of all the other values and asked you to find k, which is c. So they can give you the value of c and all the other values except b and ask you to find b, or they can ask you to find a if they give you the values of the rest, and you're always gonna be able to do that. Sometimes you're gonna need to do factorization, sometimes you're gonna need to do completion of the square, which we'll get to it as time goes on, maybe in the next video or the next 2 videos, I don't know. So but basically